Kate Winslet stars as Chancellor Elena Vernham in HBO's new political satire about a budding authoritarian regime in Central Europe. Filmed in Vienna and created by Will Tracy, co-writer of The Menu and several installments of Succession, the regime was announced in 2022, pitched as Downton Abbey, but in an autocrat's palace. The first episode, Victory Day, shadows a recently disgraced soldier who gets appointed to serve as the Chancellor's personal bodyguard, where the relationship quickly evolves, or some might say devolves, into one of codependency.
Will Tracy is obviously most known from Succession. In fact, he decided to take a lot of Jesse Armstrong's advice when making this series.
And which is smart, yeah.
When Succession was ending, he was really trying to get this one off the ground. But he's actually written 58 episodes of Last Week Tonight and worked for The Onion. And those are both, I feel like, more satire than even Succession is.
Absolutely.
And I feel like they're more closely related to this show.
I think HBO said, let's pull this guy in there because Jesse Armstrong, right? Or
Yep.
trusted him to write some of the episodes in season 4, the best season of Succession. And also we're like Kate Winslet from Mare of Easttown.
Well, not only that, you also have Stephen Frears, who directed 3 episodes of this, the first 2 episodes. He's been nominated for 2 Academy Awards, one being The Queen, starring Helen Mirren, and nominated 3 times for directing and even won an Emmy for Best British Comedy called State of the Union.
Yeah, no, I mean, HBO is just like, let's amalgamate our talent and have it create this show. The thing I like about this show is that it's a very misdirected, premise. You might look at the trailer and think, okay, well, this is going to be a female protagonist-led political thriller like Madam Secretary, Commander-in-Chief, The Diplomat from last year. But no, it's not like that at all. And if you thought that the story is like some cutthroat woman who manipulates her way into power and influence, like The Dropout, where you start from her being a young, innocent, naive person, or Inventing Anna, or even Cersei Lannister, how they kind of show her arc, it's not that at all. We are thrown right into not even the middle, but I would say after she's already decided that she wants to distance herself away from democracy. The country that she's a part of, fictitious, right? But in Central Europe, I think it's been part of NATO for a long time. But by the end of the first episode, they're already saying, no, we want to be an autocracy. Screw the United States, you know?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's all because of this new inclusion of Zubak, the new bodyguard. You have part of it being that there's this insecurity within the Chancellor that she wants to live up to her father's notion of her. And she's also afraid of her mortality. And she also just wants to be a good leader in a weird way. But Zubak is the person who kind of pushes her over the edge once he saves her life from a threat. What?
So I read that she was playing Elena Vernham. I knew that she was supposed to be an autocrat, but I thought it was under the guise of her just being a chancellor. But you're saying that, no, she straight out is like, I am an autocrat. That's what I am. And that's how we're going to run this.
No, because at the end of the first episode, she's still trying to sell that sort of we're a socialist country and we're not going to descend ourselves with capitalism and stuff like that. It's kind of like Handmaid's Tale meets Veep, where she's Selena Myers, but if Selena Myers was evil, she does show her worst of herself to her surrounding staff, while the rest of the public is unaware. By the end of the episode after the attack, it's said that she went on vacation. It reminded me so much of when Kim Jong-un disappeared for a while and they were like, what's going on with the leader in North Korea?
And they were wondering if it was his sister.
Or if they were wondering if it was a stunt double.
Right.
Whether or not the guy had actually died.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's kind of what they took from there. And I know that Jesse Armstrong from Succession would do the same type of thing where he would compare. I think the most adept comparison for the Zubak guy is Rasputin. And I think Russia. Because why?
Because I didn't think that Herbert Zubak, at least from what I read, I didn't think that he was supposed to be kind of as evil.
He starts off, and you're supposed to think of him as the Downton Abbey character, where he is the help, and he is literally just waving around a wand that is supposed to tell her about the mold level or the mildew level or the humidity.
Right, because she's worried about that.
Yeah, she's got an unfounded fear. So one of the things that the show does well is that it borrows from the best. First, you have again that Veep Selena Myers connection. You also have Chuck McGill. By the way, did you know that the person who played Selena Myers won the Emmy every year from 2012 to 2017 for Best Lead Actress in that role? So
I
they
didn't
said,
know that, no.
we want that. And then they were like, Better Call Saul has a 9 on IMDb. So let's put our main character and give her like a hypersensitivity. Since they have electricity for Chuck McGill, let's give her instead one of mold, because she has this thing called AAT, which means that she's not a deficiency of AAT, which means that her lungs could get sick very quickly.
And the Zubak just Vernham dynamic reminds me a lot of the critically acclaimed series Bodyguard with Richard Madden, because I remember that he was hired and he had to protect some form of a like high authority.
It's weird because he gets demoted halfway through because she gets mad at him when she's trying to make this deal with the U.S. This is back when she still thinks that she can. And the U.S. tries to screw her over by saying we still want to have 51% of the cobalt or whatever and that your country is supplying. And she gets mad at that. And then later that night is when she's attacked. Now, what's interesting about the backstory of Zubak is that he was part of the army, the same group that went in and killed a bunch of miners who were protesting.
Oh, wow. And do you see that?
Do you see it? No. They avoid all that. They skip you into the future, just like I was talking about. We don't see any of the lead up to her becoming an autocrat. We're just thrown into the story. Another pro for it. Where am I going with this? So Zubak is known as not a great guy, but we thought maybe he might have been misunderstood. Maybe she brought him aboard thinking he's going to be a power player for her, more just as an image, but that he might actually be a decent dude. Mm-hmm. By the end of the episode, that's kind of dashed when he's like, no, you're the best. You should really kick off some of your staff and we should work together on this and you will be the most powerful person in the world or whatever.
So why is she so close with him if she also has a husband in the show, Nicholas Vernham?
The husband, when she was attacked in bed, the husband screamed. And
so is he supposed to be seen as someone who's weak?
Yeah, he's more there just to, I mean, he loves her in a way, but he's also scared of her. Everyone is scared of her. And so it was Zubak who ran in after seeing the person who was going to hurt her through the keyhole and just like started punching him until the guy was a ham sandwich.
So everyone is scared of her, but she's supposed to be very vulnerable.
They're also all scrolls, they all have green eyes. I don't know if the filter was like what the decision was there. It was more of a moment than a pro or a con for me. I'm still trying to understand, but the colors of the country are red and blue. Everyone has green eyes and there's a green filter most of the time unless they're in a distinctly red or blue room. And there's got to be a reason for it. There's also this thing, she's obsessed with her dreams. She thinks that her and Zubak share dreams together. And by the end, Zubak is also talking to her about it, as if that's a normal thing. She, because of this mold thing, doesn't want people breathing around her. She doesn't, so they all have to put mints in their mouth and they all can't breathe in her same space.
So this is how Winslet described...
And they wear masks.
This is how Winslet described Elena Vernham. She clearly has a sense of entitlement and abandonment issues, as well as a fear of the outside world, and she subsequently feels she has to keep hidden as a leader because she's got to be beautiful and everyone has to love her.
They almost gave her too many things to try to phase into her personality. But overall, it's just meant to say, I'm insecure, but I am very domineering about that insecurity because I go and in public, it doesn't look like I can act one way for the public and then in my own heart be a different way,
Yeah.
In fact, the husband came to her at the end of the episode and was like, I still remember when you were so free loving and kind of weren't afraid of things. And she's like, no, I've always been the same person. You just didn't recognize me.
Well, I know that the main theme of the show, or the thing that Elena fears most, is that she might be losing her power. That's supposed to be the theme that Will Tracy try to incorporate. Not yet?
Yeah, not yet. Right now, she's just kind of gaining power because up until, that the name of the show was supposed to be The Palace, right?
Yes, and then it got changed to The Regime.
Well, The Palace was the main setting of the episode because it was like they were constantly doing renovation on it. They were stripping down the walls and they actually filmed in Vienna because of how cool a castle it could be, right?
I imagine it looked, probably great.
Yes, but the thing is it had a bunch of tarps on it and people were building and wearing masks the whole time because they wanted to get the ventilation system running. So she had a bunch of dehumidifiers cars constantly running at the same time. And so like the palace represents both her prestige, but also like the fact that it's just being torn down at the same time represents also that weakness that she has.
Okay.
You know, does that make sense?
Yes.
Also, there is that rebellion that's happening, but because Zubak, the guy who mowed down a bunch of miners, and her already having kind of party leadership and control, I don't think there's too much of a threat yet of her being toppled. I think what's going to cause the huge outrage, which you see in kind of the promos for the show, is going to be when she completely says there is no more democracy. I'm in charge.
Hugh Grant, yes, he's in the show, and it's the first time that they've worked together in 3 decades.
He's not in the first episode. Instead, we get the guy from Cuckoo in the first episode, who was pleasant to see. I think his name is Kenneth something, and he's one of the pros for the show to me because he doesn't have a Wikipedia page, but he just keeps on popping up. His name is Kenneth Collard, and he plays Dr. Kershaw. He is really funny, and every role that I see him in, he was in Dungeons & Dragons and Cuckoo in this, and he was introduced in this as the short furry man.
Furry. What about Agnes?
Agnes, okay, so it's interesting because Zubak, at the end of the episode, kind of makes Kate Winslet's character, the Chancellor, he tells her, get rid of these 2 people, which is the doctor and the person who hired him, the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Both of those people have been very snarky to him throughout the entire episode. Both of those people have probably been the ones who are the most believing that they can go around the Chancellor. So there's a reason to his madness of why he's telling her to rot them out of her life. But by the end of the episode, she's literally having them arrested or kicked out of the palace. And Agnes is the only person who was kind of kind and looking out for Zubak. And so she is safe. And also, she seems to have an interesting relationship with the Chancellor in that her kid is sort of an adoptee of the Chancellor. The Chancellor likes to hang out with Agnes's child.
I was wondering if you were going to recognize the actress because Andrea Riseborough has been from Waco, Black Mirror, Bloodline.
She has such an interesting face that I did look her up, and then I realized that like it's just because she's had like a crazy haircut, a difference than what she had beforehand. And when I saw her, I was like, yeah, I've seen her in a bunch of stuff.
So overall, what would you give the episode?
I would give the first episode a 7 out of 10. Again, it borrows from the best, like Succession. Remember, you never see a backflash really in Succession that shows you Kendall and
you get in the intro. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about, is you only get it in the intro, and then they like leave you to figure out the rest of it because none of that story really matters. Everybody is smart enough to pick up where we are, and that's what they try to rely on here. You don't need to know the ifs and ands and buts of how she rose to power, how she got where she was. You don't even need to see Zubak's storyline of him and how he became where he is. You kind of are just planted here. And so I give the show a lot of credit for that. I don't really believe that she could have been attacked like she was because the person broke in through a window. With the amount of guards that she had, it feels very strange that the guy was even able to get in to begin with. Also, it's modern day. There's smartphones and stuff, and there was no security that saw that before Zubak got to her. Weird. It also might be even too simple a premise because now that I understand that Zubak is the Rasputin character, like Rasputin was an interesting guy. So unless Zubak's going to start being more Rasputin-y, like he just can't die, or I don't know exactly what. Oh, I just made a connection there, but Agnes's kid has some sort of issue. I forgot what it was, but it's like a medical issue, and it's kind of similar to maybe how the Romanovs' kid had the blood issue that Rasputin.
So you're really banking on the Zubak.
Well, I'm banking on the connection of the Central European country being a little bit like Russia, even though I'm pretty sure Russia also exists in this world. Yeah, it's an interesting...
So Will Tracy, he wrote the pilot for this series with no one in mind. In fact, that's what he says he likes to do whenever he's writing a series, because every time he has had someone in mind for the role, they usually pass on it. So then he wrote the pilot, and HBO decided to pick up the series in late July of 2022. And when they were able to get Stephen Frears, again, an acclaimed director, directed The Queen, that's when Kate Winslet saw that and was like, oh, I want to be in the show. So then
Winslet is the best part of the show, though, and partially because of who she is in general. Like Titanic, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, Mare of Easttown. The jumps and the acting ability in each one of those, the variety is really astounding. I also find it funny that she was in a Divergent, playing a similar character to this, where she's sort of a dictator. And the co-star in that was Theo James.
Mm-hmm.
And Theo James is going to be the main star in The Gentleman show with Guy Ritchie that we're about to do next. So it's like their connection is pretty funny.
And Will Tracy decided he wrote episodes 2 through 6 because it's going to be a limited series of 6 episodes long, knowing that Kate Winslet was going to play the main role, but he didn't do too much research because he felt like that would kind of restrict all the creative things that he could come up with. So he decided
he gave her so much. Mycophobia, irrational fear of molds. That's one of her idiosyncrasies. Daddy issues, because she literally is visiting her dad downstairs. Now, this is the other Russia connection, because Russia was like the first country I knew of, besides like mummies, maybe in Egypt, where they saved their leaders' dead bodies and embalmed them and then had people looking back. Lenin was well known to have been embalmed, and so everybody could go look at his body up through the 40s onward. And then later on, Chairman Mao, they did the same thing there. I think they replaced him with a wax figure at one point. But the idea of like, that's a very autocratic type thing to do. And so like her dad having died a year earlier, her keeping him alive in a weird way, she's recognizing that he's having spots now, which is kind of strange because the embalming process should have been perfected enough where that wouldn't be an issue. But that is very Russian type connection too. One of the cons I will also point out, though, is that both characters, Zubak and Kate Winslet, are insufferable.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kate Winslet worked with neuroscientists and psychotherapy to actually try and understand trauma better. So I'm sure that that's probably
that's where her mouth tick comes in.
Yeah, because she was given an accent. I mean, that was one thing she was really proud of.
Well, she speaks French in this, but she doesn't have a French accent. It's still a British accent, which is her name.
And she said that the main reason she did that is because whenever you look at autocratic leaders, they always have something that is off about them. So she decided to make it the accent.
The one thing I didn't understand is why it was called Victory Day. That's the first episode's title, and it's a holiday that commemorates the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in 1945. So there's the Russia connection. But other than that, the episode had nothing to do with the day.
Well, the thing is that you're kind of sounding, some people are a little confounded by the series as well, because it started out, Kate Winslet has gotten critical acclaim, but
7 out of 10 for me.
It had an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes a couple days before the release. Ever since the release, that has dropped all the way down to a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's still only the one episode's been out.
6.2 on IMDb, 54% audience score, and people have said that it doesn't lean, they aren't really sure what the show is trying to be, because it doesn't lean enough into the satire to make it a comedy or a dark comedy like Succession. Also, they're saying that there's not enough drama for it to qualify to be a drama. Now, there have been good reviews. AV Club gave the pilot a B, and then Vulture gave the pilot 4 out of 5 stars. Even talking about Elena's number that she sings in this, comparing it to Succession's L to the OG rap by Kendall Roy in Succession. But then
Did we not talk about that? Like, it was just horrible. But it was funny because Zubak loved it. Zubak always sees her as like the most powerful figure in the room, and there's a reason why they connect, they sync. I don't know if it's a sexual tension, but it's definitely there.
Washington Post said that it flails as a satire, and also it invested so much in making a spectacle that doesn't really stand for anything. And then Entertainment Weekly said the show fell flat and gave it overall C-.
There's smart dialogue here. Agnes has a line that I think is the best line of the show: is never breathe in her direction, stay calm, don't vomit. Like, and then he does vomit in the first scene because he's all drugged up because the army tape brings him in after he's had this situation where he killed the miners. And yeah, so there's a lot going on. And I think with Will Tracy at the helm, I'm not going to give up on it. I'm not going to personally watch it, but I think that anybody who decides to isn't making a bad choice. I think this will probably head somewhere. And so 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and it's going to be a miniseries again. There's not going to be a season 2. There's also not going to be a season 2 of Mayor of Easttown. Kate Winslet they kept asking her about it in interviews for this.
Kate Winslet, again, best part of the show. Titanic, just this like romantic lead. You go back to a picture of her there, and you're like, wow. Not that like she's just like matured in a weird way. Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. It's crazy how long ago that came out, when in reality,
like 2004, I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel that long ago. And then Mayor of Easttown, I think that was the first time they were like, okay, she's going to be sort of a grumpy, like not wearing makeup, and she's going to be very serious about stuff. And then this is kind of bringing it back to like, oh, I'm going to be feminine, but not like I'm also going to be evil, sort of. I don't know. Her career is crazy, and I give her a lot of credit for that. The characters are insufferable, though. But thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.